The global economic battleground has become more volatile than ever as geopolitical tensions and retaliatory measures redefine trade relationships across continents. In recent developments, China has escalated its counteroffensive against the United States by imposing a 25% tariff on American-made cars, a decision that has reverberated across multiple industries and is reshaping the competitive landscape. The measure comes on the heels of tariffs levied by former President Donald Trump, and its impact is being felt by American businesses, farmers, and consumers alike. As China retaliates against what it sees as unfair trade practices, the largest car market in the world has turned into a strategic prize in an ongoing economic chess match, forcing stakeholders to reevaluate supply chains and pricing structures in a trade war that shows no signs of abating. American agricultural products have become one of the earliest targets in this tit-for-tat escalation. China's decision to reduce its imports of essentials such as soybeans, corn, and pork has inflicted substantial losses on U.S. farmers, whose vulnerable market position was further strained by a dramatic drop in soybean imports from 36 million tons in 2018 to a mere 16 million tons by 2020, as reported by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. The economic fallout has cost American farmers billions of dollars, and the intricate fabric of the agricultural sector is fraying under the pressure of relentless tariff increases. It's not every day that a country sees its agricultural lifeblood being throttled by the strings of international trade disputes, and one might sarcastically remark that if farming were as easy as growing crops, perhaps these losses could have been avoided with a little extra fertilizer for diplomacy. The automotive sector, long a bastion of American ingenuity and industrial might, with giants such as Tesla, Ford, and General Motors at its helm, is now struggling to maintain its foothold in a competitive landscape that is rapidly being redefined by cost differentials and technological innovations. With China's imposition of a 25% tariff on American cars, exporting vehicles to China has become a Herculean task. Even Tesla, once hailed as a symbol of cutting-edge innovation, finds itself battling stiff competition from domestic Chinese manufacturers like BYD, NIO, and Xpeng. These companies are benefiting immensely from government subsidies and supportive infrastructure policies that allow them to produce electric vehicles with superior battery technology, lower production costs, and higher performance. The brutal irony of the situation is hard to miss. While American car makers are forced to choose between diminishing profits or sacrificing market share, a nation that once celebrated its industrial dominance must now watch its technological marvels slip away to rising competitors. The repercussions of the trade war extend far beyond the automotive and agricultural sectors. Across the United States, consumers are confronting the harsh reality of increasing prices as import costs soar across a variety of industries, including consumer electronics, construction, and agriculture. In 2021 alone, the cost of producing consumer goods in America rose by 7% from the previous year, with many products, from smartphones to household devices and electronic components, experiencing price hikes between 15 and 20%. American households, already strained by stagnant incomes, are now forced to absorb higher costs, stoking fears of a broader economic downturn. One might joke that the only thing rising faster than these prices is our collective inability to complain effectively at the dinner table. If only our banks would appreciate witty commentary as much as our budgets suffer. Just as the traditional sectors falter under the weight of these impositions, Canada has entered the fray with energy measures that could ignite further instability. In a dramatic twist, Canada has imposed an energy retaliation measure against the United States, prompting fears of soaring gas prices and electricity costs. As Canada supplies about 4 million barrels of oil daily to the U.S., accounting for roughly 10% of America's total crude oil demand, any disruption in this supply chain is bound to trigger a cascade of economic shocks. Ontario's Premier, Doug Ford, has levied a 25% surcharge on electricity exports, warning that this measure will hurt workers, businesses, investments, and families on both sides of the border. His impassioned declaration, "It's hurting workers, it's hurting businesses, it's hurting investments, and it's hurting families on both sides of the border. It needs to end," underscores the deep domestic impact of these international disputes. With electricity bills set to increase by 100 US per month for millions of households in states like Michigan, New York, and Minnesota, the tangible effects of this energy conflict are echoing in every corner of American life. As if the dueling titans of economic policy were not enough, the situation escalated further in February 2025 when the U.S. government imposed a sweeping 25% tariff on imports from both Mexico and Canada, a move that sent shockwaves through global markets. With over 80% of Mexico's exports destined for the United States, this tariff has placed the auto industry in Mexico, which accounts for 27% of the nation's export value, under extreme pressure. Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum responded in no uncertain terms, declaring, "We will not accept this imposition," and orchestrated massive protests at Zocalo Square in Mexico City, where tens of thousands of demonstrators rallied with fervor under the banner of national respect. The protest was not merely an emotional outburst, it was a calculated signal that Mexico would not cede its economic sovereignty without a fight. Negotiations with the White House eventually led to a temporary reprieve, delaying the full implementation of the tariffs on goods covered under the USMCA until April 2nd. Yet the U.S. government's steadfast refusal to lift tariffs on critical raw materials such as steel and aluminum continues to leave North American automakers scrambling to adapt. Companies like Ford, GM, and Stellantis have warned that the tariff-induced production cost increases might force them to make drastic cuts, with Ford cautioning that the price of an F-150 truck could skyrocket by as much as $12,000, a staggering figure that could deter even the most determined buyers. The intricate dance of tit-for-tat tariff impositions has not only destabilized vital industries, but also rattled financial markets. The announcement of the tariff saw the Dow Jones plummet over 700 points in just a matter of days, and the Mexican peso suffered a 5% decline against the U.S. dollar, further exacerbating inflationary pressures in that country. In response, Mexico has actively sought to renegotiate trade deals with Latin American nations, such as Brazil and China, signaling a strategic shift to reduce dependence on the U.S. market. Meanwhile, retaliatory tariffs on key American agricultural exports, including corn, soybeans, and avocados, have delivered a severe blow to farmers in Texas and California, whose livelihoods are now further imperiled by rising costs and an unpredictable market environment. Amid these escalating conflicts, one has to wonder if the various stakeholders are engaged in the world's most expensive game of economic chicken. Only in this version, the winner gets to raise production costs instead of a feathered trophy. The reverberations of these tariff battles are far-reaching, extending even to the realm of high-profile technology companies. Tesla, once the uncontested leader in the electric vehicle market, is now a stark reminder that even the mightiest can falter. Over the past 6 months, Tesla has evaporated nearly $800 billion USD in market capitalization, with its stock plummeting more than 15% in a single day and experiencing further declines in after-hours trading. This dramatic fall in value has raised profound questions about Tesla's future viability, as investors who once revered the company as a near-cash cow now view it as a beleaguered enterprise grappling with mounting production costs and intensifying international pressures. Amplifying these challenges is the fact that China, a nation that once relied heavily on American technology, has enacted a series of retaliatory tariffs that target not only U.S. coal and crude oil, but also high-end electric vehicles. As reported by the China Customs Administration in December 2024, the tax on Tesla's products, especially on models such as the Model S and Model X, has risen from 15% to 25%, further inflating production costs and rendering these vehicles less accessible to Chinese consumers. In stark contrast, domestic competitors like BYD are achieving market dominance. In 2023, BYD sold over 1.2 million vehicles, capturing 25% of China's electric vehicle market, while Tesla's domestic sales have dwindled to just 350,000 vehicles. This dramatic shift in consumer preferences is compounded by political controversies surrounding Tesla's CEO Elon Musk, whose contentious public statements have eroded customer loyalty. With market share in the U.S. falling from 79% in 2020 to 54% in 2023, and even steeper declines in Europe where sales have dropped by 30%, Tesla now faces a future where overcoming rising tariffs and stiff competition may prove insurmountable. For those of you who are passionate about the dynamics of the electric vehicle market, Make sure to subscribe and hit that like button. Every bit of support helps us continue delivering incisive analyses like these. Another flashpoint in this saga is the shifting control of strategic hubs like the Panama Canal. Once a conduit for more than 5% of global maritime trade, and crucially, over 70% of which is connected to U.S. ports, the canal has become a focal point in the ongoing strategy between major global powers. In early 2025, former President Donald Trump announced a bold plan to take back control of the Panama Canal, criticizing the high fees imposed on U.S. ships and accusing the Hong Kong-based conglomerate CK Hutchison Holdings of compromising American trade security and national defense. Trump's proclamation, delivered at a campaign rally, was underpinned by internal documents that revealed the Trump administration had explored a range of options, from enhanced military cooperation to technical assistance, in a bid to secure long-term U.S. access to this critical trade artery. The reaction from Panama, however, was swift and unequivocal. The Panamanian Foreign Ministry declared, "The Panama Canal is a national asset. It belongs to the Panamanian people, and it will remain that way." In a series of rapid strategic adjustments, Panama withdrew from China's Belt and Road Initiative, a program it had joined in 2017, and canceled a long-standing port concession agreement with CK Hutchison Holdings, originally signed in 1997 and renewed in 2021. Shortly thereafter, a consortium led by U.S. investment giant BlackRock announced a deal valued at $22.8 billion to assume control of port operations. Although Panamanian authorities maintained that this was purely a commercial transaction with no bearing on national sovereignty, the timing of these events has prompted suspicions of a close alignment between U.S. policy objectives and private financial interests. As the canal's operation becomes yet another theater in the struggle for global influence, China has remained notably quiet, even as it continues to benefit from being the canal's second-largest user and a key investor in Latin American infrastructure projects. The strategic recalibrations in Panama highlight the fact that modern power struggles are no longer fought with traditional military might. Instead, they are waged via economic leverage, diplomatic maneuvering, and financial investments. A nuance that sometimes leaves one wondering if global trade negotiations are just extended rounds of high-stakes poker, where the chips are the very lifeblood of national economies. Yet another facet of this global trade transformation involves the meticulous balancing act that nations must perform in adapting to ever-changing tariffs and shifting alliances. The U.S., once a dominant force in the industrial age, now faces challenges on multiple fronts, from soaring consumer prices and disrupted production networks to intense competition in high-tech industries, such as electric vehicles. With American companies forced to reform production processes, reduce costs, and invest heavily in emerging technologies like green energy and automated manufacturing, the pressure is mounting. Industrial giants that for decades proudly carried the mantle of American ingenuity are now wrestling with the harsh realities of a hyper-competitive global marketplace. The domino effect of these changes touches every aspect of daily life, from the rising electricity bills driven by Canadian energy surcharges to the escalating costs of auto parts that crisscross the U.S.-Mexico border up to 8 times before the final assembly of a vehicle. Every extra tariff, every additional fee, sends ripple effects that amplify production costs and ultimately burden the consumer, a phenomenon that has left many questioning whether the economic shifts could eventually trigger a broader financial crisis. As these intertwined narratives continue to unfold, the core question that persists is whether American consumers, businesses, and even entire industries can adapt quickly enough to survive the relentless pressure of this protracted trade war. The situation is not isolated to a single sector, but represents a complex, multidimensional conflict where trade policy, energy supply chains, and international diplomacy all converge to shape economic destinies. For instance, repeated hikes in tariffs and surcharges, regardless of the sector, are contributing to a gradual decline in consumer purchasing power, making everyday goods less affordable while incomes remain largely static. This imbalance has a cascading effect, straining families across the nation who are forced to allocate a larger share of their budgets to cover essential costs such as electricity, gas, and basic commodities. In this environment of uncertainty, The interplay between regulation and market forces has never been more pronounced. On one hand, governments are eager to protect domestic industries by imposing tariffs that aim to level the playing field. On the other hand, businesses are caught between the need to remain competitive in a global marketplace and the risk of bleeding profits due to imposed costs. Such was the case in the North American auto industry, where managers face the stark reality that increasing production costs may force them to reduce output or even shutter plants. The delicate balance between cost management and strategic investment has led analysts to question how long the industry can absorb these shocks before the cumulative pressures culminate in a structural breakdown. In a bitterly ironic twist, as companies warn of factory closures and job cuts, it seems that the very measures intended to protect domestic markets might instead be sowing the seeds of a new kind of industrial decline. Throughout these tumultuous developments, the ability of nation-states to protect their strategic interests while adapting to rapidly changing market conditions remains a topic of intense debate. While American policymakers continue to view tariffs as necessary instruments to shield domestic production, their long-term implications for consumer welfare and global trade balances are subjects of heated discussion among economists and industry experts. With aggressive policies now being implemented on multiple fronts, from China's coordinated retaliation and Canada's energy surcharges to the U.S.'s sweeping tariffs on imports from Mexico and Canada, the stakes are extraordinarily high. The cumulative effect of these policies is poised to redefine global supply chains and trade partnerships for years to come. If you're finding this analysis thought-provoking, please consider subscribing to our channel and engaging with this content by liking and commenting with your viewpoint. What do you think of the evolving trade conflict and its consequences for the global economy? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We love to hear your insights and debates on this complex issue. As we study these historical shifts, it becomes clear that nations are no longer insulated in their economic pursuits. Instead, they are locked in a dynamic interplay where every decision resonates deeply across global markets. At its heart, this saga is a tale of both ambition and compromise, a striking illustration of how modern geopolitics is increasingly defined by economic might rather than mere military prowess. In this new era of international relations, where the rules of engagement are continuously rewritten, the stories of American farmers losing billions, auto manufacturers grappling with unprecedented tariffs, and even high-profile companies like Tesla plummeting from once dazzling heights serve as stark reminders that economic warfare spares no one. Meanwhile, as Canada, Mexico, and Panama recalibrate their strategies amid these seismic shifts, one might quip sarcastically that if global politics had a theme song, it would likely be a medley of budget breakdowns and tariff tantrums, a tune that is as dramatic as it is all too real. The modern trade war is a multifaceted conflict where every tariff, every subsidy, and every diplomatic gesture can have far-reaching impacts on industries, households, and even international alliances. From the reduction in U.S. soybean imports, cutting the figures from 36 million tons to 16 million tons, through to the far-reaching impacts on consumer electronics and energy, the narrative is one of transformation and turbulence. Countries once tightly interwoven by long-standing trade relationships now find themselves reconfiguring alliances and exploring new trade corridors, fundamentally challenging the old order. American companies are being forced to innovate and adapt, all while contending with diminishing investor confidence and surging production costs that threaten to undermine decades of industrial achievement. The financial markets, meanwhile, are reacting with a mix of shock and skepticism, illustrated by sudden drops in indices and currency devaluations, underscoring the fragile nature of an interconnected global economy in these volatile times. While some might find dark humor in observing these shifts, as if the global economy were a clumsy juggler suddenly dropped a few valuable balls, the stakes remain extraordinarily high. The delicate equilibrium of current trade policies underscores that there are no easy fixes in a world where economic decisions ripple through societies and reshape destinies. As every nation seeks to protect its interests, the challenge lies in balancing national security with global cooperation, domestic prosperity with international goodwill. It is a precarious balancing act in which the wrong move by any player could set off a cascade of unintended consequences. leaving communities and industries reeling from the fallout. In sum, the present state of the global trade environment is characterized by a dynamic interplay of tariffs, retaliatory measures, and strategic recalibrations that could reshape the economic order for decades to come. From the tightening grip on American agricultural exports by China to the cascading effects of energy surcharges imposed by Canada, every facet of this conflict reinforces the notion that we are living through a historic shift in the nature of global economics. The combination of mounting tariffs, dwindling investor confidence, and shifting production strategies is generating a ripple effect that extends far beyond boardrooms and factory floors, seeping into the daily lives of millions of families. As we navigate these turbulent waters, the resilience of national economies and the adaptability of global trade networks will determine how successfully nations can meet the challenges of an ever-evolving economic battlefield. As we bring this in-depth analysis to a close, it is clear that the ramifications of these trade disputes and tariff battles are multifaceted and profound. The unfolding drama on the international stage serves as a vivid reminder that in today's interconnected world, every policy decision carries the potential for wide-ranging repercussions. Whether it is the staggering 25% tariffs shaking up the automotive market, the energy surcharges that threaten to disrupt daily life in parts of the United States, or even strategic maneuvers by nations striving to secure vital trade routes such as the Panama Canal, the complexity and urgency of the situation cannot be understated. In this high-stakes environment, every move is scrutinized, every decision measured, and every consequence deeply felt, not just by multinational corporations, but also by the ordinary consumers who are left to bear the brunt of these policies. What does this shifting global landscape mean for you, the everyday citizen and keen observer of international affairs? How do you believe these rapid changes in trade policy will shape the future of our economy and your personal financial well-being? Your thoughts are invaluable in this conversation, so please share your opinions in the comments below, and remember to like and subscribe for more comprehensive analyses as we continue to unravel the complexities of global trade and geopolitics. In these uncertain times, while governments and corporations jockey for position in an elaborate contest of strategy and fiscal might, one thing remains abundantly clear. The global economy is in a constant state of flux, and adapting to these changes is both a challenge and an opportunity. As policymakers tilt between protectionism and free trade, industries adapt with technological leaps and calculated investments, and consumers navigate ever-increasing costs. The battle lines are drawn not in isolation, but across a deeply interconnected world. This narrative, woven from the threads of high tariffs, retaliatory measures, and shifting power dynamics, continues to unfold with dramatic intensity, leaving us with a front-row seat to the evolution of modern geopolitics.